Camino food I can't eat. Well, you can't eat. That's going to be the topic for this week, coming right up. So I had a great question from one of our subscribers this week, and it was around the topic of gluten intolerance and how she was going to cope on the Camino. So I am no expert on allergies, but what I thought I'd do is talk about some of the ways that people with particular food requirements do cope on the Camino. So let's get right into that. First of all, I would say don't be overly concerned. Lots and lots of people with your particular food requirements have walked the Camino. And I'll give you a tip which I think will be quite useful at the end. So number one tip would be consider one of the more popular Caminos, particularly, well, I was going to say if it's your first, if you've walked before, you know what it's like. But maybe one of the more popular Caminos like the Frances, the Portuguese, the Ingles. Why? Only that the facilities are going to be a lot better. You're going to have a lot more places to eat and places to buy food along the way as compared to some of the more remote Caminos. And probably just as importantly, because so many more pilgrims walk those routes, the people catering for pilgrims, quite literally, have far more experience in catering for the broad needs of pilgrims and all their various requirements. So a more popular route is certainly going to make life easier, I think. Number two, I would say, is consider cooking for yourself. I know lots of vegans and vegetarians do this when they're walking Camino. So if you're staying in albergues, a lot of those albergues will have cooking facilities. You're not necessarily going to know until you get there, of course. I'm not sure if Gronze actually shows the ones that have cooking facilities. Do look at the Gronze website. I'll put a link down below. It's got, links to all most of the accommodation along most of the Caminos. I know they certainly show whether there's communal meals. I think they show whether there's cooking facilities as well. Just be aware that in Galicia, closer to Santiago, the municipal albergues, those set up and run by the local councils, are infamous for having wonderful kitchens but nothing to cook with. We think it's because they want to encourage you to go to the local cafes. So just be aware of that if you're getting into Galicia. But lots and lots of albergues do provide cooking facilities, and lots of them provide communal meals. So again, on the more popular routes, if you make your hosts aware of your particular food requirements, they may well be able to cater for that. They've been doing it for lots of people for lots of years. But if you're concerned, if it's a bit of a challenge, cooking for yourself can be fun. The local shops and supermarkets, particularly on the popular routes, are very good. So you can get out there and buy the ingredients to cook something. You might want to cook with other pilgrims. That's always a fun thing to do. Get band together and cook something and eat together. It's very social. Even if you're not really wanting to cook stuff, it's very easy to buy food that doesn't need cooking, that you're just going to sort of put together and prepare a basic meal. Again, I'm more aware of sort of vegetarian and vegan requirements, but lots of those pilgrims talk online about where they shop and what they buy and things like that. So that's always another option. Number three that I would mention is always carry a backup meal. I think particularly if you're concerned about your particular nutritional needs. So for example, whilst I'm not vegan, vegetarian, or have luckily don't have any food intolerances, on my last Camino on the Via de la Plata, it wasn't always going to be the case that I could get a meal when I needed a meal. Lots of very small villages without bars, without shops, and so I got in the habit of actually carrying a backup meal with me. And I understand from lots of people online who have particular food needs, they very often do that. So when you get into a village or a town that's got a good shop, you might think, oh, I can make a meal out of that. That's great. It's not perishable too much, and you might carry that in your backpack as a bit of a backup meal if when you get somewhere that, it's hard to find stuff that you can eat. So that's always a good one. Do look on Google Maps, more important on the more remote Caminos, but I use Google Maps a lot when I'm walking to a town or a village, I'll look for the cafes, the restaurants, and they very often show the opening times. Just be aware that, you know, again, not so much on the popular routes, but you know, they do follow sort of siesta times. Very often you might find shops that are closed between 2 and 5 and that type of thing, but that's where Google Maps is really useful. So that's number 3, 2 more to go. Oh, can I ask you a quick question? Are you subscribed to the channel? The reason I ask that is that the vast majority of people who watch these videos are not subscribed. And if you're enjoying the videos, please do subscribe for 2 reasons. One, it helps the channel grow, but also it helps me enormously understand which videos are more popular, and then it means that I can make sure that I'm providing the sort of topics that you enjoy watching. So let's move on. Number 4. Reach out to others who have similar needs to yours. And where do you find those? Well, one would be a great resource, I think, is Ivar Rifke's Camino Forum. I'll put the link down below. There's something like 100,000 members, some very addicted, very active members. I seem to spend half my life on there. But it's a wonderful community of people who are planning to walk their first Camino, have walked many. If you jump on there and say, hey, I'm gluten intolerant or I'm a vegan, how will I cope? You'll get bombarded with replies from people, you know, who have the same requirements. So that's really cool. Where else might you go? There's a lot of really great Facebook groups. Again, I'll put a link down below. I think I've joined a few recently. I would say go with the bigger groups, only that, you know, more people, you're going to find people who have the similar requirements to yours. And the one that I find is quite good, I think it's called Camino All Routes, and it's the moderator is Johnny Walker Santiago, who lives in Santiago, but I'll put a link down below. So again, put a question there, you'll get loads and loads of answers. Now the last one, you're going to say, but that's pretty obvious, Rob, we all know about that. It's Google Translate, but there's a few different ways you could use it. So if you don't carry a smartphone, this is probably one of the main reasons to carry one, unless your Spanish is fluent. My Spanish is not, it's pretty poor. But I'll give you a few tips that I use to get over language issues. So Google Translate these days is really superb. I first tried using it about 10 years ago on my very first Camino. It was pretty rudimentary. On my last one, I found some new uses for it. So of course you can speak into it and hold the thing up and people can read it. You can get them to speak into it and you can read it. I tend to not make things too difficult for the people that I'm communicating with. So a lot of common phrases, for example. So I put together a whole bunch of common phrases that I think I might need on the Camino, and I have them on my planning spreadsheet, which is on my phone. If you've seen any of my planning videos, you know I'm an ultra planner. And one of the tabs on that spreadsheet is language, and it's got 300 or 400 phrases in Spanish that I might want to use. You know, it's like, can you tell me where the doctor is? You know, I need the police, you know, whatever it might be. So that's one way. You could put down all the sort of food-related questions that you have or things that you need to tell them in English and Spanish, and you can read them to them. If you're uncomfortable reading it to people and getting the pronunciation messed up, then you might want to use Google Translate and just hit, you know, play, and it will pronounce it correctly, mostly. So that's a use of Google Translate. One of the ways that I used it on the last Camino, which is going to be very relevant for you, is to actually use the camera feature. So if you're not used to using Google Translate, when you've got your English to Spanish or whatever it might be, there's a little camera button, hit the camera, and then you've got a live translating video basically going on. So what do I use it for? I read restaurant menus with it. It's not always 100%, but it's pretty close. I think in the context of this video, what it would be really good for is reading the ingredients on packets and tins, so you can see what things are in the shops. So that's another use of Google Translate. Another thing you might want to do is to have prepared, either on your phone or maybe on some little cards, it might have it sort of in English and Spanish, the English bits so that you know what it says. It could say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm a vegan. Do you have vegan options. It might say, I'm gluten intolerant, or it might say I can't have anything with peanuts in, or whatever that might be. And people will be sure to help you out. A word of caution though, and look, if you've got a particular intolerance, I'm probably preaching to the converted here, you know way more about this than I do, but just be aware that sometimes people may not quite understand what that intolerance is and the consequences of something going wrong. So if there are serious consequences that require things like EpiPens, I'm sure you know to carry an EpiPen and all that kind of stuff. But on a lighter note, there are some examples, for example, there are examples where people look at foods in a very different way in Spain. So it's a bit of a joke, I think, in pilgrim circles that tuna is actually seen as a garnish for a salad in Spain. It's very often sprinkled across the top of a salad. So, if you're basically a vegan or whatever, that's not a vegetable to you. So, just be aware that sometimes things may not be quite understood, or they may think of different foods in a different way. So that's just an example I could think of. There we go. I think that's about it. Talk to others. Get onto the forums, the Facebook groups, about your particular challenge. If you have walked a Camino and you're vegan, intolerant to something, vegetarian, do comment down below and let us know how you get on, because let's put this into context. There are almost 500,000 pilgrims last year collected at Compostela walking the Camino. That probably means about 700,000 at least walked various Caminos. There'll be lots of people with exactly your food requirements who've walked the Caminos before. So reach out, Facebook groups, onto the forum. There's going to be people there who can help you with very specific questions. I just wanted to help with some general advice today because I'm only qualified to do that. But hopefully that was of interest. I'll put a video link up here, lastly, which is a link to a video which shows all the different foods that I've enjoyed eating on the Camino, and it shows some restaurant menus, cafe menus and so on. If you're kind of wondering what food types you're going to come across, that might be of interest to you, so we'll put that link up there. Wonderful question, thank you for that, and bye for now.